March 23, 1945. Night. The Rhine River. The water is black. Cold. Fast. On the eastern bank, Germany still exists as a fighting nation. On the western bank, the Allied armies wait, tired, bloodied, victorious, but stalled. Between them lies the last natural barrier Hitler ever believed could save the Reich, the Rhine. And tonight, that belief is about to shatter. German officers said it was impossible. Hitler insisted it was impossible. No army crosses the Rhine at night. Not under fire. Not without weeks of preparation. Not without crushing losses. Yet somewhere in the darkness, engines idle low. Pontoon bridges creak. Assault boats drift silently, packed with American infantry gripping rifles so tightly their knuckles burn in the cold. And one man is smiling. General George S. Patton stands near the riverbank, helmet pulled low, watching the current like a gambler reading the final card. He doesn't wait for permission. He doesn't wait for daylight. He moves. Berlin is far away, but the tension is immediate. Inside the Führer bunker, maps are spread across the table, red pins marking collapsing fronts. The western line is bleeding. Cities are falling. Divisions exist only on paper. Still, Hitler clings to one certainty. The Rhine will hold. He told his generals so. He promised the German people so. The enemy cannot cross it in force, he had ranted. Not suddenly. Not without warning. But warnings are exactly what never come. Back at Allied headquarters, Dwight D. Eisenhower hasn't slept properly in days. His face is drawn, eyes red from staring too long at maps that refuse to stay still. The war is almost won, but that's what makes this moment dangerous. One mistake now could cost tens of thousands of lives. Patton's Third Army is moving too fast. Again, an aide leans in, voice low. Sir, Patton reports his advance units are at the Rhine. Eisenhower exhales slowly. He knows what that means. Patton isn't asking if he can cross. He's asking how much trouble he'll be in after. Can he hold a bridgehead? Eisenhower asks. Silence. Then, if the Germans react quickly, no. If they don't, he could be across by morning. Eisenhower closes his eyes for a moment. This could either end the war faster or explode into catastrophe. On the German side, the situation is worse than anyone admits. Entire units are filled with boys and old men. Ammunition is rationed. Radios barely work. Fuel is almost gone. Officers lie to their superiors. Superiors lie to Berlin. And still, they trust the river. They shouldn't. Because Patton has done what no Allied commander was supposed to do. He has crossed the Rhine without waiting for orders. The first boats slip into the water. No artillery barrage. No thunderous prelude. Just silence, and then chaos. German sentries open fire too late. Flares shoot upward, bathing the river in ghostly white light. Machine guns chatter. Men fall into the water, vanish instantly. Others keep paddling. Patton's infantry reaches the far bank. Then more come, and more. Within hours, American armor is rolling east. The German response collapses almost immediately, not from lack of courage, but from disbelief. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not here. Not now. Entire German units wake up surrounded. Phones ring endlessly. Messages stack up unanswered. Commanders scramble, asking the same question again and again. How did they get across so fast? At dawn, the truth becomes unavoidable. Patton hasn't just crossed the Rhine. He has broken the German Western Front in a single night. Tens of thousands of German soldiers, cut off, leaderless, exhausted, begin surrendering en masse. Rifles pile up. White flags appear in windows. Columns of prisoners stretch for miles. By the end of the day, the number is staggering. 50,000 German soldiers captured in one night, without a major battle, without Berlin's permission to even acknowledge it. When the report finally reaches Hitler, the room goes quiet. No shouting, no rage at first, just silence. His last defensive myth has collapsed. The Rhine didn't stop the enemy. It invited him in. A general speaks carefully. Mein Führer, the Americans have crossed in force. Large formations are surrendering. Hitler grips the table. Patton's name is mentioned, and something breaks. This is not just a military disaster. It is psychological annihilation. If Patton can cross the Rhine at will, then nothing stands between the Allies and the heart of Germany. The war is no longer slipping away. It is sprinting. And in the darkness of Berlin, Hitler is about to say something that reveals just how completely the situation has escaped his control. Because this night on the Rhine doesn't just change the war. Verdun, France. Supreme Headquarters, Allied Expeditionary Force. The room is dim, heavy with cigarette smoke and exhaustion. Maps cover the long table. Belgium, Luxembourg, the Ardennes, edges curled from constant handling. Red and blue pins crowd the center like wounds that won't stop bleeding. The word Bastogne sits in the middle of everything. General Dwight D. Eisenhower stands over the map, hands resting on the table, shoulders tight. He hasn't removed his jacket. He hasn't sat down. Sleep has become a memory. Outside, snow falls without mercy. Inside, silence. An aide breaks it. The latest report from Bastogne, sir. The 101st Airborne remains surrounded. German armor on all approaches. Eisenhower nods slowly. He already knows. Nearly 10,000 American soldiers trapped. Ammunition rationed to the last magazine. Medical supplies nearly gone. Wounded freezing in cellars, barns, and shattered houses. And no air support. The weather has grounded everything. Eisenhower straightens. How quickly? He asks quietly. Can we mount a relief operation? No one answers. Generals exchange glances. Calculations flash behind tired eyes. Distances, fuel, road conditions, German strength. Someone clears his throat. Sir, realistically, one general begins. It will take at least a week. Possibly longer. Another adds, carefully, the roads are frozen. Snowdrifts block entire divisions. Moving armor south, then pivoting north, under fire. It's extremely difficult. Eisenhower's jaw tightens. We don't have a week, he says. 4 days. 4 days is all they have. The words hang in the air. 4 days before ammunition runs out. 4 days before the wounded begin to die in large numbers. 4 days before the Germans crush Bastogne completely. Failure here wouldn't just be tactical. It would shatter Allied morale across the entire front. Eisenhower rubs his eyes briefly, then looks up. Is there any commander, he asks, who believes this can be done faster? Silence again. Then a chair scrapes softly against the floor. General George S. Patton leans forward. He has been quiet, unusually quiet. His helmet rests beside him, gloves folded neatly. His eyes are sharp, alert, almost impatient. Yes, sir, Patton says. Every head turns. Patton steps closer to the map, pointing south of Bastogne. My Third Army can pivot. 3 divisions. We move north. A murmur spreads across the room. One general whispers, pivot? In this weather? Patton continues, voice steady. 4th Armored Division leads. We break through here, here, and here. He taps the map 3 times. Distance? Eisenhower asks. About 100 miles. In winter, another general mutters. Patton nods. In 48 to 72 hours. The room goes still. Someone exhales sharply. Another officer shakes his head in disbelief. That's impossible, a voice says. You'd have to turn an entire army 90 degrees in the middle of a German offensive. Patton doesn't argue. He simply looks at Eisenhower. I've already prepared the contingency plans, he says. If you give the order tonight, I attack on December 22nd. Eisenhower studies him. George, he says carefully, can you genuinely do this? For the first time, Patton smiles. Yes, sir. I've been expecting this. Eisenhower steps away from the table, pacing slowly. His mind races. If Patton fails, the 101st Airborne is lost. If Patton fails, German forces could cut the Allied front in half. If Patton fails, Eisenhower will carry that decision for the rest of his life. He stops and turns back. You understand the consequences, Eisenhower says. This isn't just about Bastogne. If this goes wrong, it won't, Patton interrupts. The room stiffens. Eisenhower holds Patton's gaze. You'll be moving in blizzard conditions, Eisenhower continues. Frozen fuel lines. Blocked roads. Enemy armor. You'll outrun your supply lines. Patton nods once. Yes, sir. And if you're delayed? Eisenhower presses. If the Germans counterattack? Patton answers without hesitation. Then we fight through them. No bravado. No theatrics. Just certainty. Around the table, officers whisper quietly. 3 divisions, in this weather. God help them if the roads collapse. Patton's mad, or he's right. Eisenhower closes his eyes briefly. He thinks of the men in Bastogne. The wounded. The freezing nights. The letters never sent. Then he thinks of Patton, reckless, brilliant, dangerous. If anyone can do this, he tells himself, it's him. Eisenhower opens his eyes. Very well, he says. You will pivot your army and relieve Bastogne. Patton straightens instantly. Yes, sir. You have 48 hours, Eisenhower adds. No more. Patton nods again. That's enough. December 19th becomes December 20th. Orders fly. Engines start. Columns form in the snow. Maps are folded. Plans become movement. The clock is ticking. By December 22nd, Patton's armor must be at Bastogne, or the 101st Airborne will be destroyed. Eisenhower watches the room empty, one by one. When he is alone, he whispers to himself, Godspeed, George. Outside, the snow keeps falling, and the impossible march begins. December 20th, 1944. Before dawn, Patton's Third Army begins to turn. Entire divisions disengage from the Saar region, engines roaring in the frozen dark. Columns that were facing east now pivot north, a full 90 degrees, in the middle of the largest German offensive of the war. Snow falls in thick sheets. Roads are ice. Fuel lines freeze. Men sleep sitting up, if they sleep at all. 100 miles stand between Patton and Bastogne, and time is already running out. Tanks crawl forward, treads grinding against frozen earth. Artillery pieces are hauled by hand when trucks slide uselessly into ditches. Infantry march with heads down, breath crystallizing in the air. The weather is merciless. Blizzards reduce visibility to yards. Engines stall. Radios crackle, then go silent. Every mile forward feels earned in blood and frostbite. German forces don't make it easier. Ambushes erupt along narrow roads. Anti-tank guns fire from tree lines. Artillery shells burst overhead, showering snow and shrapnel together. Progress slows, but it never stops. At Supreme Headquarters, Eisenhower receives updates almost hourly. Third Army advance slowed. Enemy resistance heavy. Roads blocked by snow. Engineers clearing. 4th Armored Division continues north. Eisenhower studies the map, pencil tapping softly. If they fail, he thinks, 10,000 paratroopers are lost. If they fail, Bastogne becomes a symbol of defeat. Late at night, alone, he writes contingency letters. Words no commander wants to prepare. His hand trembles slightly. Maximum effort, he radios Patton. The 101st cannot hold much longer. Patton's reply comes quickly. I've got the men moving. We will break through. December 21st. The snow deepens. Patton's lead elements clash with entrenched German units. Towns change hands block by block. Infantry clear houses with grenades and rifles, fighting room to room. Every delay costs hours. Every hour costs lives. In Bastogne, the situation is desperate. The 101st Airborne is nearly out of ammunition. Medics reuse bandages. Morphine is rationed. Wounded men shiver uncontrollably in basements, wrapped in blankets stiff with ice. German artillery pounds the town day and night. Then a message arrives. A German delegation approaches under a white flag, demanding surrender. Inside the American command post, General Anthony McAuliffe reads the demand, stunned. What does this mean? Someone asks. McAuliffe thinks for a moment, then snaps. Nuts. The reply is sent back. Outside, the shelling resumes. The 101st holds. But barely. December 22nd. This was the day Patton promised Eisenhower he would attack. 4th Armored Division surges forward. The roads are chaos. Burning vehicles, abandoned German equipment, snow-stained dark. Tanks fire point-blank into enemy positions. Infantry follow, slipping, crawling, advancing yard by yard. German resistance stiffens. They know what Bastogne means. They know if the Americans break through, the Bulge collapses. Still, Patton's men push on. Reports reach Eisenhower. They're moving. They're fighting hard. They're still short of Bastogne. Eisenhower exhales slowly. For days, he thinks. That was the limit. The fourth night falls. December 23rd. The skies finally clear. For the first time in days, Allied aircraft roar overhead. Parachutes blossom white against blue sky. Supplies drop into Bastogne. Ammunition, food, medical kits. Cheers erupt among the defenders. But it's not enough. They need Patton. Now. December 24th, Christmas Eve. Patton's armor is close, painfully close. German counterattacks slam into the advancing columns. Tanks burn. Men fall. Progress slows to a crawl. Eisenhower stares at the map long after midnight. If they fail tonight, he whispers. Outside, church bells ring faintly in distant villages. In Bastogne, soldiers sing quietly, voices hoarse, weapons close at hand. December 25th, Christmas Day. The fighting intensifies. Snow turns red. Artillery booms without pause. Patton's spearhead pushes through one last line of resistance. An officer radios back, breathless. We can see Bastogne. Eisenhower grips the edge of the table. Almost, he thinks. Almost. December 26th, 1944. Morning. Patton's tanks break through. At Assinois, lead elements of the 4th Armored Division punch into the Bastogne perimeter. American infantrymen emerge from foxholes, stunned, cheering, crying. Hands shake. Helmets are slapped. Some men simply sit down in the snow, too exhausted to speak. The siege is broken. But for Eisenhower, for Patton, for every man who marched through ice and fire to reach this point, the truth is clear. This was not luck. This was will. And in the next act, the cost and the consequences will finally be revealed. December 26th, 1944. Late afternoon. The snow still falls, but now it feels different. Patton's Third Army is exhausted. Men haven't slept properly in days. Engines cough. Ammunition is low. Faces are hollow. Eyes rimmed with ice and fatigue. Boots crunch through frozen slush as tanks grind forward one last time. Ahead lies Bastogne. Between them, enemy strongpoints dug deep into hedgerows, anti-tank guns hidden in white fields, infantry clinging to frozen foxholes. There is no turning back. Artillery opens up. Shells rip through the trees, exploding in thunderous bursts that shake snow from branches like rain. Smoke rises, thick and black, rolling across the road. Forward, someone shouts. Tanks surge through the haze, steel beasts pushing past burning wrecks. Infantry follow close behind, slipping, firing, advancing by instinct more than orders now. Every step forward is paid for. Then, movement. American helmets appear through the smoke. A frozen figure rises from a foxhole, disbelief etched on his face. Are you Third Army? The answer comes with a grin. Hell yes. At 4:50 p.m., just south of Bastogne near Assinois, the moment happens. A Sherman tank rolls past a shattered road sign. Infantry spread out behind it. Men from the 101st Airborne emerge cautiously from their positions. Dirty, unshaven, eyes sunken but burning with life. Hands meet. Backs are slapped. Some men laugh. Others cry openly. One paratrooper mutters, "We knew you'd come." A Third Army soldier replies, voice cracking, "Patton said we would." The siege is broken. After 6 days surrounded, outnumbered, and nearly out of everything, the 101st Airborne is no longer alone. Inside Bastogne, word spreads fast. They're here. Patton's here. We're relieved. Men sink to their knees in the snow. Medics finally exhale. Wounded soldiers smile for the first time in days. The guns don't stop, but the fear does. Miles away, at Supreme Headquarters, the phone rings. Eisenhower's aide answers, then freezes. "Sir, it's General Patton." Eisenhower takes the receiver. "Yes, George." Patton's voice is calm, controlled, but underneath it, something else. "Ike," he says, "we're through to Bastogne." For a moment, Eisenhower says nothing. His shoulders sag. The tension drains from his face. His hand tightens around the phone. "Thank God," he finally whispers. Around the room, officers exchange stunned looks. He actually did it. In this weather. Against all odds. Eisenhower closes his eyes briefly. 10,000 lives. Saved. "George," Eisenhower says, voice steadier now, "you did it." Patton responds without hesitation. "Just doing my job, Ike. The men did the real work." Eisenhower shakes his head slowly. "No, George," he says quietly. "You moved an army 90 degrees in a blizzard. You crossed 100 miles of ice and fire. You saved 10,000 lives." He pauses. "That's why you're invaluable." Patton doesn't reply right away. When he does, it's softer. "They earned it, sir." Back at the front, Patton arrives near Bastogne, stepping from his vehicle into knee-deep snow. He surveys the battered town, burned buildings, shattered trees, men wrapped in blankets, weapons still close. He nods once. "Good work," he tells his commanders. No speeches, no theatrics. But the pride is unmistakable. The impossible has been done. Strategically, the breakthrough is decisive. The German Bulge begins to collapse. Momentum shifts permanently. Bastogne becomes a symbol, not of near defeat, but of resilience and resolve. Privately, Eisenhower writes later that night, "The wait is gone. The gamble paid off. Patton delivered." Publicly, he praises teamwork and courage. But alone, he allows himself a single, quiet truth. This changed everything. Outside, snow continues to fall across the Ardennes. But now, it settles on a battlefield that belongs to the Allies. And as Eisenhower reflects on what has been achieved, he knows the story is not finished. Because what Patton did here will echo far beyond Bastogne. December 27, 1944. The war does not pause for reflection, but for the first time in days, Dwight D. Eisenhower allows himself a moment of stillness. The map of the Ardennes remains spread across his desk. Bastogne is circled in pencil, the lines now stable, the crisis finally broken. Outside, snow glimmers faintly in the early light. Inside, the weight begins to lift. Eisenhower sits alone and writes, "Relief has come. The gamble succeeded. The men held. Patton delivered." The words are simple, almost restrained. But beneath them lies the truth Eisenhower rarely speaks aloud, the moral burden of command. The knowledge that one decision, one wrong calculation, could have condemned 10,000 men to death or captivity. He thinks of Patton, audacious, brilliant, difficult, a man who bends rules and strains patience, a commander who moves faster than headquarters can follow. And yet, when everything hangs by a thread, one who delivers. Eisenhower exhales slowly. Extraordinary talent, he thinks, cannot be managed like ordinary men. On December 27th, Eisenhower drafts a personal letter. Not for the press, not for history, for Patton. "George," it begins, "your planning, speed, and execution at Bastogne saved lives beyond measure. You proved once again what boldness, when married to preparation, can achieve." Then a pause. Eisenhower adds a line only Patton would understand. "Never forget the responsibility that comes with such talent." Praise and warning. That was always the balance. Days later, on January 2nd, 1945, Eisenhower writes again, this time to trusted colleagues. To George Marshall. To Winston Churchill. The public statements speak of teamwork and Allied unity. The private words are more honest. Patton's relief of Bastogne was a turning point. The speed of the pivot, the movement of 3 divisions in winter conditions, and the pressure maintained throughout were extraordinary. Had it failed, the consequences would have been severe. There is no exaggeration. Bastogne was not just a town. It was the hinge of the German offensive. When Patton broke through, the Battle of the Bulge lost its momentum. German reserves were spent. The initiative passed permanently to the Allies. The war's end became inevitable. Years later, Eisenhower would write in his memoirs, "Patton's relief of Bastogne vindicated my trust. It demonstrated operational excellence under extreme conditions and reminded me why extraordinary talent must sometimes be managed, not constrained." It is not a sentimental statement. It is a commander's truth. Eisenhower reflects on the faces he will never forget. The paratroopers of the 101st Airborne, frostbitten and unbroken. The Third Army soldiers who marched through ice and fire without complaint. The medics, the drivers, the engineers, men whose names history may never record. Victory always has a human cost. Leadership demands accepting that cost, then carrying it. Patton would move on. So would Eisenhower. The war would end months later. But Bastogne would remain. A lesson written in snow and steel. That preparation makes audacity possible. That trust, once given, must be absolute. That leadership is not about avoiding risk, but knowing when the risk is worth everything. History remembers the victories, but beneath them are the quiet decisions, the sleepless nights, the letters never meant for the public, and one winter moment when an army turned 90 degrees into a blizzard and proved that courage, guided by judgment, can change the course of history. That is the legacy of Bastogne.